My name is Michael, and I guess you could say I collect jobs the way some people collect postcards. I'm not really the settle down type. Never have been. I like moving from place to place, picking up whatever work I can find. The weirder the job, the better the story. Some people work for retirement. I work for the anecdotes. Not everything sticks, and that's kind of the point. You do something strange for a few weeks, see a side of the world you've never seen before, then pack up and move on. That's the good stuff. I've painted murals in an abandoned roller rink, helped a guy organize a collection of antique prosthetic limbs, even spent 2 months in Arizona walking dogs that were trained to detect termites. I didn't ask how that worked. Half the fun is not knowing. People think I must have flunked out of something, or that I'm running from something I'm not. I just like saying yes when something unexpected shows up. A normal job doesn't give you much to remember. A weird one, that's the kind of thing you bring back with you. I don't carry much. A couple changes of clothes, a notebook full of half-written stories, a thermos that leaks if you hold it the wrong way, and a toolbox I keep mostly for show. It rattles like I know what I'm doing, which helps in interviews. I've got everything I need to sleep in the car, cook a can of beans, and clean up in a truck stop bathroom. I travel light, and I leave even lighter. I don't worry about long-term plans. I've got no mortgage and no kids. I stay curious. That's all. People I meet along the way tend to open up, especially when they see I'm not trying to impress anyone. You show up on time, ask the right questions, and take the work seriously. Even if the work itself is completely ridiculous, and you'd be surprised how many doors open. I once worked for a woman who needed someone to sit in her backyard every night and record whether or not the wind chimes made noise. She said it was for insurance. I didn't ask. Another time, I spent 2 weeks in the basement of a coin collector's house just sorting jars of loose change by the year printed on them. He never came downstairs once. I'm not about the money. I mean, sure, I've had lean months, eaten more gas station burritos than I care to count, but it is all worth it for those moments where you just stop and think, how the hell did I end up here? The last job I had was over in Idaho, delivering groceries for a place that didn't have a storefront. Just a warehouse, maybe even not that. I never saw inside. I'd get a list, pick up boxes, and drop them off. No receipts, no signatures. A few times, I knocked and someone opened the door just wide enough to take the box. Didn't say a word. Kind of thrilling, honestly. That gig dried up like they always do. One morning the van was gone and nobody was answering the office line. So I did what I always do when a chapter closes. I drove till I ran out of steam, found a diner with a bottomless coffee policy, and picked up a newspaper. And that's when I saw it. Small ad, no logo, no bold print, just 4 words. Postal clerk, immediate start. No phone number, just an address and a box number. It was so plain, it had to mean something weird. I circled it twice and smiled. The post office is about 20 minutes outside of town, and it looks exactly like you'd expect. 1-story building, faded red trim, American flag out front that's mostly just string now. No sign of anyone else working there when I showed up. Just a gray metal door, a buzzer, and the sound of the wind kicking dust around. I didn't even get an interview. I hit the buzzer, gave my name, and the lock clicked. Inside it was colder than I expected. Clean, but old. The floors were a kind of yellow tile that might have been white once, and the lights made this low humming sound that never stopped. The front lobby was empty. No customers, no clerk window. Just a few chairs and an old vending machine with a handwritten note taped to it that said, "Don't." Then someone called out my name from the hallway, and that's when I met Maria. She didn't look surprised to see me, just nodded and said, "You're the new guy." Not a question, just a fact. She handed me a badge with my name on it and a pair of work gloves that were already broken in. Maria's been here longer than me. 3 years, she says. That's about all I know for sure. She's quiet, keeps to herself, but not in a mean way. More like someone who's learned not to waste energy unless she has to. She wears the same green windbreaker every day and keeps her hair pulled back tight, like she's expecting something to fall from the ceiling. We're not friends exactly, but she's the only other person I've seen working here. She's nice, in a very specific way. Brings extra food in her lunch and splits it without asking. Tells me when to avoid the south hallway because the floor polishers are running. She mutters things under her breath sometimes. Prayers, maybe. Or just habits she's picked up from someone a long time ago. She says she's saving up to go back to school. Nursing, probably. Something useful. The postmaster hires people like that, she told me. People with one foot already out the door. People who won't ask too many questions. I didn't know we had a postmaster. I've never seen him. The job itself is simple if you don't think too hard about it. We move crates. We sort packages. We load carts and seal pallets and label things with numbers that don't follow any system I've ever seen. Most of the shipments don't go through the front office. They come in through the back loading dock and get pushed down long hallways that don't always go where you think they should. Sometimes we get boxes with no return address, no weight listed, no sender. Just a code, 6 digits and a letter. Maria knows them all by heart. She keeps a little notebook in her back pocket, and when I asked her what was in it, she just said, "A map that doesn't work anymore." The building is bigger than it looks from the outside. A lot bigger. I've been working here for a few weeks, and I still haven't seen all of it. There are whole wings that are locked off, doors with no handles, and a basement that Maria says we don't use. When I asked her why, she said, "Because it's already full." When I asked her how long she's been working here, she said 3 years. Then she added, "That's long enough to forget what this building looked like before." I wanted to ask more, but the buzzer rang, and she was already moving. Most jobs fade after a while. A few details stick, the smell of the place, somebody's weird habit, maybe one story you tell at a bar when the conversation slows down. But usually, they blur together. This one didn't. I took the post office job for the same reason I've taken all the others. Because it was strange. Because it had a vibe to it. Because the ad was too plain to be normal. I figured I'd stick around for a few weeks, maybe a month, long enough to get a decent story out of it. What I didn't expect was how fast that story would start writing itself. I've worked in weird places before. I've met odd people. But there's something about this place, this building, this job, Maria, that doesn't sit like the others. It's not loud about it. Doesn't throw it in your face. But once you're inside, it starts to peel you open. And I've seen things now. Small things at first. Odd labels. Doors that lead somewhere different the next day. Things that don't make sense. Maria says not to dwell on any one thing too long. Just scan and move. The longer you stare, the less it makes sense, she told me once. I came here to collect stories. That's still true. And this is the first one worth telling from the start. Story 1. Alright, so there's a strange hole in the basement. We call it the drop room. They didn't tell me about the basement when I started. Nobody gave me a tour of it. No one mentioned it in orientation. On the surface, the place looks normal. Old, quiet, little run down in spots, but still holding together. You wouldn't think there was anything unusual beneath your feet. Maria didn't bring it up either. Not at first. We worked the main floor, sorted crates, logged codes into a machine that looked older than either of us. It still prints on green and white paper with perforated edges. Most days follow the same rhythm. A truck shows up, we unload it, packages come in, packages go out. There are no customers. Everything's handled through back channels. Even the delivery logs use codes instead of names or addresses. A few weeks in, I started exploring a little during lunch breaks. Not snooping, just walking. The building goes on longer than you expect. Some hallways lead nowhere. Some dead end into locked doors. There's a room full of broken shelves. Another lined with bins that haven't been touched in years. Most of it's dimly lit, with that buzz you get from old lighting. And then I found the hatch. It was under the main floor, tucked behind a stack of unused mail carts. A big metal door set into the ground, thick and square, with faded yellow paint around the edges and stenciled letters across the top. Drop room access. Authorized staff only. Didn't look like a chute or a dumbwaiter. It looked like something from a ship. All steel and bolts and official looking. I leaned down to check for a handle. There was one. Heavy and cold. And as I reached for it, Maria's voice came sharp behind me. "Don't." I stood up fast and turned. She was standing a few feet away, arms crossed, not angry, just firm, like she already knew what I was about to do. "Yeah, I'm just checking. I didn't know we had a lower level," I said. "We don't. It's not for us," she replied. There was a long pause where neither of us moved. I smiled, tried to play it off. "What, you worried I'm gonna fall in?" She smiled back, but looked more nervous than anything. She just said, "Not unless you're told," and walked away. After that, I left the hatch alone for a while. I asked around later, just to see what I could learn. We don't have a lot of staff. As far as I can tell, it's just Maria, me, and 2 older guys who run the loading dock, but only on Wednesdays and Sundays. They keep their heads down. I tried to bring up the hatch in conversation once, and they acted like they didn't hear me. So I went looking through the office files instead. Most of it's junk. Inventory forms, broken equipment records, delivery schedules printed in half-faded ink. But buried in the back of an old file cabinet, behind a stack of time cards from the 80s, I found a blueprint. The paper was yellowed and curled at the edges. It showed the building layout from above, then a cross-section of the underground levels. Most places only had 2. The storage basement and the access tunnel. But this one had a 3rd mark, 50 feet below, labeled Non-Operational Containment Bay. There were no stairs, no elevator, just one access point, the hatch I'd found. The maintenance logs were even thinner. Most pages were blank. One page from 1974 listed the bay as sealed indefinitely. The last person to sign off on it didn't write a name, just a scribble that looked more like a sketch than a signature. And that should have been the end of it. But then came the noise. It was late. Maria had already clocked out. I stayed behind to finish logging a mixed pallet that came in damaged. The overhead lights buzzed like they always do. The machine spat out forms one line at a time. I worked by habit, mind somewhere else, half listening to the clatter of cartwheels as I moved boxes from one end of the room to the other. And then I heard something underneath me. It wasn't the pipes. I know what pipes sound like. This wasn't a rattle or a drip. Wasn't the heating system either. Nothing mechanical. It was slow, heavy. I listened. It came again, louder this time. A long, wet, dragging noise. like fabric stuck to concrete. Then a pause. Then again. It sounded like the scenes in one of those old serial killer movies. The kind where the guy wraps a body in a tarp and hauls it across a basement floor. There was a scrape, a drag, a pause to catch breath. Slow and sure, like whoever was down there wasn't in a hurry. I walked toward the center of the room, toward the hatch, trying not to make noise. I leaned down real slow. Didn't open it, just listened. The dragging sound was coming from directly beneath me. Closer than it should have been. If the drop room really was 50 feet down. I stood up and backed away. I grabbed my jacket and left through the back entrance without finishing my forms. That was the first time I've done that since I started. The next morning, Maria didn't ask me why I left early. She just handed me a sandwich and said, "Truck's late today." I thought about telling her what I heard, but I didn't. Not yet. That noise should have been the strangest thing I'd run into here. It would make a good creepy story, too. The kind you tell your friends on late-night drives when you're trying to scare each other. But that hole in the basement wasn't the weirdest part about this place. You see, this place has some pretty strange rules. Alright, so story 2. We're not supposed to go out into the parking lot before 6 a.m. Maria told me the rule on my third night. We were sitting by the break room window. She was eating something wrapped in foil. Subway, maybe. I was logging damaged parcels. The sky outside was still dark, and I must have glanced at the lot without thinking, because that was right when she said it. "You know we don't go outside before 6, right?" I looked at her. "What, like a curfew?" "No, it's a rule," she replied. She didn't explain much after that. Just said something about a few missing persons cases around the area. I didn't push for more information when I saw how uncomfortable the topic made her. But from that point on, I noticed there was no reason to be out there before dawn anyway. All the trucks were parked by midnight. Deliveries didn't come in until mid-morning. The lights in the parking lot stayed on all night, but the camera above the bay door was always angled slightly down, like it wasn't meant to catch much past the edge of the building. Still, I listened. I never opened the doors before 6, not even to smoke. I've always been into true crime stuff. A friend of mine back in Oklahoma got me into it. We'd trade podcasts, watch old documentaries, dig into old cold cases. I liked the puzzle of it, you know? The way things didn't always add up the way they should. So when Maria mentioned the rule, it stuck in my head like a splinter. One night after my shift, I looked it up. Wasn't easy. The post office doesn't show up on any public maps with its current name. You have to dig through old entries, back when it was listed under Federal Logistics. I found a few staff directories, some maintenance logs, then eventually something called Incident Review, Site 16. There were 5 files, all of them redacted, but not completely. Each one followed the same pattern. Time, between 2 and 5 a.m. Report, staff member failed to report its shift change. Action taken, lot searched, no sign. Result, terminated from payroll, no further details. The oldest one was from 1979. The newest was 1989. That's 10 years. 5 people. But the scariest part was a clip of an old security log someone had pulled from a VHS tape. The footage wasn't great. Black and white, jumpy, timestamp flickering. It showed the loading dock from above. An employee was sorting out packages. Nothing moved for the first few minutes. And then something passed between the trucks. It was a figure, Tall enough that its head brushed the side mirrors of the mail trucks as it passed. And then the screen glitched. When it came back, every truck in the lot had its headlights on. All the doors were open, engines running, nobody behind the wheel. The lot looked like a stage, lit from every angle. And then the camera caught something standing directly in front of it. Not moving, just standing there, smiling. You couldn't see the whole face, just the lower half, the nose, the mouth, and a wide grin. First, I thought the footage was frozen. It stayed like that for over 3 minutes. Exactly 3 minutes and 21 seconds. Not a flicker of motion. And then I noticed the thing's chest rising and falling. It wasn't a still frame. They were standing there the whole time, smiling into the lens. And then the screen glitched again. Hard. When it came back, the lot was empty. Trucks off, lights off, camera reset. No sign of him. And no sign of the employee assigned to that shift. Maintenance records said the engines had no fuel. Completely drained. Keys still in the ignition. The missing employee, a man named Richard Keller, was never found. And that's when HR added the rule, nobody outside before 6 a.m. I asked Maria about it the next day, just to see how much she'd tell me. I didn't bring up the footage. I just said, "Why 6?" She didn't answer right away. And then she said, "Because whatever walks through here at night doesn't like daylight." She said the old workers called it Mr. Widemouth. And after that, I couldn't let it go. I started treating it like a case file. The first victim officially linked to the series was a guy named Joseph Dunn, worked nights at a trucking depot about 12 miles from here. 46 years old, divorced, 2 kids, no criminal record. His car was found idling at the edge of the depot lot around 4:15 a.m. Door wide open, headlights on. No signs of struggle, no witnesses. The security cameras were disabled sometime between 3:40 and 3:55, and that was 1991. Joseph's body turned up 6 days later in Flat Rock Lake. Fully clothed, no water in the lungs, which meant he was already dead when he went in. The coroner's report noted severe internal blood loss, but no major wounds. Just 2 puncture marks on the back of each hand. The press didn't know what to do with it. Some called it a botched robbery, others suggested drugs. But the more you looked, the harder that theory was to believe. And then came the next one. Carla Brinker, 27, part-time clerk at a 24-hour diner off Route 3. Last seen on her smoke break, around 2:30 a.m. Same thing. Car still running, purse untouched, no signs of struggle. Her body was found 2 weeks later, same leg, same marks, same blood loss. Then another, and another. In total, there were 7 confirmed cases, all night workers, all vanishing between 2 and 5 a.m., all found within the same 5-mile radius of the lake. The FBI opened an investigation after the 4th body, and for a while it made the local papers. The Flat Rock Killer, some called him. Others used the term Mr. Widemouth, borrowed from facility slang after someone leaked a copy of that old incident report. But just as quickly as it started, the coverage faded. No suspect, no clear motive, no witnesses. I found one interview with a retired sheriff's deputy, name redacted, who'd worked one of the early scenes. He described something that didn't make it in the official report. He said, "Yeah, I remember looking in the car. The seat was damp. Not with water. Not blood either. Just this strange, cold residue. Like someone left a freezer door open. The creepiest part was the paper. Just 3 letters, folded real neat. Same in every pocket. Same ink. RJW. I ran that combination through every database I could think of. Nothing. No missing persons with those initials. No employees at the depot. No known aliases. I even checked gravestones in the local cemeteries. Each victim had one final detail. A small scrap of paper folded into their pants or jacket pocket. On every one was written the same 3 letters. RJW. No one ever figured out what it meant. A name, maybe. A message. A mark. The handwriting matched in all of them. Same ink, same fold. Like someone took their time. No prints. No smears. Just those letters. Always clean. Always placed with care. I searched everything I could. Court records, police logs, graveyard listings, even local historical registries. Nothing ever matched. People have their theories, sure, but they don't hold. And like most stories with no ending, this one got filed away, shelved, left to gather dust. Still, the rule held. No one goes out in the parking lot before 6 a.m. There's no sign, no lock on the door. Nothing stops you but your own judgment. I've had chances. Early shifts, late nights. I've stood by the loading bay and watched the clock crawl towards 6. And some part of me has always waited for a reason to go out early. A good excuse. Something important enough to just push the door open. Truth is, this building's got more going on than anyone would guess from the outside. You'd think it was just another aging post office, holding up out here in the middle of nowhere. But the stories tucked into the corners, they run deep. And none run deeper than the one about the Postmaster, if they're even a real person. Maria says they are. I beg to differ. I think there's something else entirely. Story 3. There's a black ledger on the postmaster's desk. It's bound in leather with no title on the cover, no markings on the spine, just a thick black book with a silver clasp that sometimes gets left unlocked when the office door is cracked open. We're not supposed to be in there. Most days the door stays closed. Locked, usually. But not always. The first time I saw it, I was pushing a cart past the front hallway and noticed the light was still on. The door was open about an inch, just enough to see the edge of the desk. The ledger was sitting right in the center. Open. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Inside were pages of careful handwriting, long entries written in clean cursive, the kind that probably came from years of practice. Instructions mostly. Short directives with no context. Deliver 10 parcels to the archivist below. Mark each with red wax. Burn the paper trail. Relocate lost item 7B04 to containment south. Seal hatch if opened. Every entry ended the same way. Signed off with a pair of letters. AB. Maria says that stands for Archivist Below, whoever that is. She said it in a low voice, like it wasn't meant to be repeated. I asked her once what below meant. The basement? The hatch room? I asked. She just shrugged as she handed me my third cup of coffee that morning. People have different answers. That's the point. Sometimes mail comes in with no real sender and no origin code. Just a box or a sealed envelope, addressed plainly to the archivist below. Handwritten. No stamps, no tracking info. And always with the same thing on the seal. A red wax stamp. Perfectly round. Pressed with no symbol or mark. Just blank wax. We don't scan those. We don't record them in the system. Maria takes them directly to a back room that's kept locked at all times. I don't know what's in there. Nobody does. Unless they've been here long enough to earn a key. Maria's the only one I've seen with one. She says the orders come from upstairs, but the instructions always mention below. That part confuses me. The postmaster's office is on the main level. There's no working second floor that I know of. And the basement, well, we've already talked about the basement. You know, the whole thing reminds me of the Screw Tape Letters, that book by C.S. Lewis. The one where a demon writes letters to his nephew from below, giving advice like a manager in a company no one wants to admit exists. There's something about the way these notes are worded that feels the same to me. Formal, vague, clean on the surface, but with something wrong underneath. I've tried to meet the postmaster. First week, I knocked on the office door with a stack of onboarding forms. No answer. Second time, I waited outside for almost an hour after my shift ended, thinking maybe I'd catch him on the way out. Never happened. Maria told me not to bother. He doesn't work normal hours, she said. But he signs off on everything. She nodded. That doesn't mean he's here. Over time, I started to notice that no one ever actually sees the postmaster. There are forms with his signature, orders typed on letterhead with his name. The break room calendar is marked with PM reviews on the last Friday of every month. But when the day comes, nobody meets with him. The review papers are just left in his tray, and the next morning they're gone. Handwritten notes show up later, always in that same cursive. At first, I thought maybe it was a title passed around, like, I don't know, rotating supervisor. But then I noticed that the handwriting never changes. The name never changes. And Maria always talks about him the same way. Like he's one person, just somewhere else. We were sorting returns one night when I finally brought it up again. Okay, so has anyone ever actually met him? I asked. Maria was stealing a damaged crate. She didn't answer right away, then said, once. That got my attention. She looked down as she spoke, like she was just thinking out loud. There was a woman here before me, she began. She was the one who trained me. Older, smart, always on time. One day, she came in shaking, wouldn't speak for the whole shift. She said she'd seen him, just once. I asked her what he looked like. And? I asked. Well, she said, like someone trying very hard to look normal. Maria said. After that, she started telling me little things. Not all at once, just pieces. Like she wasn't sure how much she should say, but needed someone else to hear it. She said the ledger's been here longer than any of the staff. No one knows when it started, or who kept it first. Every person who worked in this building has their name somewhere inside it, whether they've seen the book or not. And there's always that signature at the bottom. A.B. Archivist below. Some nights, Maria says she hears someone turning pages in the locked office, even when the building's empty. She never checks. She just keeps her head down and waits for the shift to end. I asked if she's ever opened the book herself. "No, but I've seen what happens to people who try," she said. I wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her voice told me it wasn't a story she was ready to share. Not yet. She changed the subject. "You ever wonder why the second floor is sealed off?" she asked. I looked up. "We have a second floor?" She nodded toward the stairwell near the end of the south wing. I'd passed it 100 times. I thought it led to a storage closet. "Used to be open, before things changed." "Before what changed?" I asked. I was always up for a good story. Maria paused, sealing the last box. She looked at me and said, "Before the postmaster stopped coming down." Story 4. The second floor doesn't show up on the official building map. You'd never know it existed unless someone pointed it out. Most people don't. Even the stairwell's easy to miss. Tucked behind the south hallway, where the old vending machines are, next to the door marked janitorial. The lights above it don't work. There's no elevator, no signage, and the staircase itself is chained off with thick metal links looped through every rail. A laminated sign hangs from one of the chains. Authorized access only. PM use. I'd passed the stairwell a dozen times before Maria mentioned it. I always assumed it led to storage, or maybe to the roof. The only time I was ever up there was to deliver random boxes to the second floor bathrooms, which I thought functioned as additional storage. I was wrong. One night, while we were unloading the back truck, she asked me if I'd ever noticed the ceiling. "What about it?" I said. "You ever hear it move?" I shrugged. Buildings creak. This place is old. Maria didn't say anything for a while, and then she asked if I'd seen the deliveries. "The Thursday ones?" I asked for confirmation. She nodded. Of course I'd seen them. Same schedule every week. A box arrives sometime in the early hours, already sitting on the loading dock by the time we show up. It's wrapped in thick brown paper, tied with twine, and always sealed tight. No sender, no barcode, no address. Just a typed note stapled to the top. "Leave by second floor bathroom door. Do not open." The first time I helped carry one, I noticed the smell. Rot. Not garbage, not food waste. Something worse. It's wet and sour, like raw meat. Wasn't a small box either. Took both of us to carry it, and even then it felt unbalanced, like something was shifting inside. I asked Maria what it was. She didn't answer right away, then said, "It's for the nephew." I laughed. "So the postmaster's got a nephew now?" "That's what people say." She nodded as we headed down the stairs. "Wait, like he lives up here?" Maria looked away as we entered the break room. "Something like that," she said. And that was the first time I started paying attention to the ceiling. At night, especially on Wednesdays, the day before the delivery, you can hear it. Footsteps. They move from one end of the ceiling to the other, crossing above the break room, the locker hall, sometimes over the mail sorting floor. Maria never mentions it. You just hear it and keep working. I joked once that it sounded like someone pacing. Maria nodded and gave me another one of those nervous smiles of hers. He doesn't sleep well." I tried asking around, but there wasn't anyone else to ask. Most of the older guys that unload the trucks don't talk about that part of the building. They call it the locked floor. One of them said it used to be employee offices decades ago. Another said there were dorms back when they housed staff on site. But that part shut down before Maria even started. She said she only learned about it through old paperwork she found in the back rooms. There's a wall of file cabinets near the maintenance closet, way in the back past the unused locker wing. Nobody touches them now, but she used to sort through the documents when shifts were slow. Said it helped her understand what kind of place this really was. And that's where she found the article. An old newspaper clipping. No date printed, but the edges were browned, and the font was the type they used in the 60s or 70s. Talked about a fire. A rural family, name redacted, whose home burned down just outside the county limits. Only one survivor, a boy. No name, no photo. Just referred to as the nephew of a federal employee. Maria didn't have proof it was connected, but she said the paper was stamped in the corner. Internal. Postmaster records. She said her grandmother used to tell stories about creatures called unmentionables. Monster stories her family used to keep her and her siblings in line during childhood. The term unmentionables rang a bell with me. Wait. Zombies? I asked. Not like on TV, she began. They're not slow and they're not stupid. They can think, talk, remember who they were, but they still have to feed. I tried asking for more details, like a name or description, but Maria could never give me a straight answer. I figured she didn't know much either. What I do know is that every Thursday we haul the same box to the same upstairs door. Always the same weight. Always the same smell. There's a small hallway that runs past the base of the stairs. Short, maybe 10 feet. Ending in a door labeled restroom, staff only. It's old and dented, but still locked from the inside. We leave the box against it and walk away. By the time our shift ends, it's gone. I've never heard the door open. I've never heard it unlock. But the package is never there in the morning. The chains on the stair rail have a padlock on them. It's old but functional. There's dust on the upper steps, but like I said, not all of them. Someone still walks there. Not often. Just enough to be noticed by the people who pay attention. I do now. The footsteps, the smell, the missing packages. There is something upstairs. Maybe it's the postmaster's nephew. Maybe it's something older. Something left behind when the second floor was shut down. But whatever it is, it's still there. And it doesn't come downstairs. Not yet. And yeah, that's all I've got for now. 4 stories, more or less. A hole in the basement nobody's supposed to open. A parking lot with its own schedule. A ledger full of orders from someone nobody's seen. And something, or someone, pacing the second floor above our heads every Thursday night. You wouldn't think a post office in the middle of nowhere would have this much going on. But here we are. I've started writing some of it down, just to keep track. Not everything, just the parts that stand out. The odd ones, the pieces that don't quite fit. Maybe someday I'll pass them along. Maybe they'll end up in someone else's notebook down the line. For now, they're mine. Maria says she's planning to leave soon, a semester or two of nursing school if the financial aid comes through. She doesn't talk much about it, but I know she's already got the paperwork in a folder tucked behind the break room microwave. When she goes, I'll probably head out too. I can't imagine being here alone. Very scary thought. But I'm not done yet, and I get the feeling this place is not done with me either. Hey, huge thank you to all my patrons. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, there's a link in the description. I hope you enjoyed the story, and have a good night.